Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to our July Power Panel for 9-1 Wonder Women. We are so happy that you are here. A couple of things before we get started. If it ever happens that your screen freezes, what usually works with Crowdcast is refreshing your browser. So give that a try if you have some technical difficulties. Also, we very much encourage chatter over here in the text box or in the comment field. So if you do have questions, please feel free to throw them out into the chat box. We really want to make this a discussion for you, get any questions that you have answered. And of course, we're always interested in your comments. So please feel free to share any experiences that you have as well. And we're very, very excited. So first of all, I want to thank DataMark. DataMark is our partner for our Empower panels. We will be doing one every month. And the whole purpose of these is to talk about things in 911 that people may not be talking about for whatever reason. It's a hard conversation to have. It just hasn't been brought up. People may not feel comfortable bringing it up. So we want to tackle these topics. We always want to have a diverse panel, diversity in thought, diversity in experiences to share where they're coming from. Again, this is a panel discussion. It is not a training. We are sharing our experiences with you in the hopes that we can help in some way, or we can help influence you positively, or we can allow you to explore something that perhaps you haven't explored before. So that's why we are here. We will continue to do these monthly. We are always, always open for topics. So this particular topic came about from a conversation that Michelle and I had at Nina, and just a couple of questions and concerns and what can we do about it? How can we help? And for me, I've discovered over the past couple of years, the first step in kind of tackling a new concept or topic is just to put it out there, have the conversation, get some feedback, just kind of start that discussion so that we can talk to each other and figure it out. I think that 911 has come a very long way in opening up to each other, opening up emotionally, opening up professionally, sharing resources, sharing stories, sharing everything. So the Empower panels are here to take that and keep that going and keep that rolling and show that this is a normal thing to do, to talk about what's on our mind. So that's what we're here to do today. Today's session is called Know Your Audience. And this came about for several reasons, but one of the things you're going to hear us talk about most today is professionalism in 911. What does that mean? What does it mean to be a 911 professional? Why is that important? And what are some things that we can do to be more aware of how we're being perceived professionally, but not losing our individuality, not losing ourselves, but being ourselves and being professional at the same time. And knowing your audience is a huge part of that. It's different if you're in the comm center or if you're meeting with the legislature to talk about reclassification, to become first responders, to elevate the professionalism of 911. We want 911 to be a career. We want there to be career paths within 911. We want to reduce turnover. We want people to be proud of what they do, because what your job is something to be incredibly proud of. So what are some little things that maybe we're not thinking about that we can do to elevate ourselves, to set ourselves up for success, and professionalize 911 as much as we can while keeping ourselves a part of it? That being said, we're going to introduce ourselves, talk about kind of our career progression in 911. We all have a different career path. And also, I wanted to make sure that we have different perspectives in terms of generations on this panel. So each one of us represents a different generation. And of course, that comes into play because different generations are raised differently. We know different things. We've had access to different things. As things change, we all have to work together still to achieve these common goals. So, my name is Sarah Weston. Yes, I'm a millennial. Yes, I'm proud. I'm a proud millennial. And I started in 911 when I was very, very young. So I was 22, right out of college, and I started in a consulting firm, which was an extremely professional environment. And I've been there ever since. However, I had no idea coming out of college into an office where people dress professionally, guys wore ties, and there weren't a lot of women. And again, I was very young and I did not know how to present myself professionally, that it even mattered. I kind of had the attitude of, I am who I am. This is me. I'm going to wear what I want and when I can afford and, deal with it. But that was not setting myself up for success in terms of talking to coworkers, talking to clients. So I had a lot to learn, and I learned a lot of it the hard way, which is why this particular topic is so important to me personally, just to become aware. So yeah, that's me. I will throw it over to Leah Missildine. Hi, Leah.
Good morning, everybody. So as Sarah said, I'm Leah Missildine. I'm the executive director here at the Alabama 911 Board. I, at the end of this month, complete my 23rd year in 911. So it's a good place to be, and I'm still excited to be here. I did not plan to be in 911 for my career. Actually, I was on track to be an architect. So somewhere I took a wrong turn or a wide turn or something, but I'm very happy to be here. I'm a proud Gen Xer, so I guess that's the category, if we're going to go ahead and say that, that I fall in. And I will say that my first 15 years in 911, I spent in the PSAP. I would tell you that my PSAP that I grew up in, and I literally grew up in, I started as a part-time dispatcher while I was in college, and over 50% of our staff were college students because they had a student program that had a tuition reimbursement initiative or incentive for if you maintain a certain number of course hours in GPA. They had a part-time program where they reimbursed your tuition. So
that's really cool. I'm sorry to interrupt, but that's a really cool program. I wonder if I do that.
The neat thing, I guess maybe the neat thing about it is, but the distinct thing about it is that well over half of our staff was under the age of 20, 21, 22. So think about 911 and the important things that that's handling as a 911 professional. And I don't really know that most of us looked professional all the time. We were a bunch of college kids. Now, right. we did some pretty amazing work. Our teamwork was, I would still put it up against anybody as far as the team that we built and the atmosphere of that teamwork. But if you came in and saw us, you might think, why are you wearing shorts? Why are you wearing a t-shirt? Those sorts of things. But if you come from class and then work all night and then go home, take a nap, that was sort of something to be noted that we'll talk about a little later in this. But while I was in the PSAP for the 15 years that I was there, I wound up working my way through all positions all the way up to the director of the PSAP, which is, again, something I didn't quite plan on, but I had the good fortune of being in the right place to seize those opportunities. And then I had the opportunity, once law passed and created the state board office, to come here. And you can imagine that was in pretty dramatic change. One, to come to an office that had never existed before for a state 911 board and a state program that had always been run by volunteers, contractors, and locals. Um, and so then that was a journey in and of itself as far as my journey to professionalism and really knowing my audience and how to achieve the things that needed to be achieved here. So, Michelle, you want to go next?
Sure. I think I can add 10 years to you on that. I'm not going to just throw my age out there, but no, May was my 33rd year. So that was my anniversary. I can remember when I got out of college, I had such ambition and I was like going to go just be an administrative office person, right? That's what I went to school for. But nobody wanted to hire early, in my young or early 20s, they didn't want you to come manage their business. So I called home and I was like, what the heck am I going to do? I got to do something. And my mom said, well, the only ad in the paper is a dispatcher. Now, did you hear what I just said? Ad in a paper. It was a weekly newspaper. We didn't have this constant, engagement with social media. I mean, I got the first computer in our office, I want to say in 91, and it was the first computer. But anyway, it was the only position open. So I was like, okay, let's do it. I went and I kind of followed along the same lines as you. I didn't really have any expectations of it being a career. And I was the youngest one there. And it was a very male-oriented field. And the majority of the dispatchers were in their late 50s. And I was here in my early 20s and, I learned a ton. I listened and I learned a ton, but we were a very small agency. With that said, I kind of went up through the ranks as well, supervisor, director, and before you knew it, the county added emergency manager to it. And it was just like I had a lot, but it took me outside of the 911 center. I wasn't always sitting behind the console. And I really realized then that this is a much bigger opportunity for me. And the fact was that I was one of the only women in almost every meeting that I went to. So that in itself was a communications barrier because I can remember, and I talked about this in a meeting not too long ago, is that we all walked in, we put our stuff down, and one of the guys said, hey, can you make some coffee? And I thought, oh, well, I could, but I don't drink it and I don't really know how, but it was just assumed, so there was not only there's a generational issue because almost everybody in the career or in the path that I was going was a bit older, but there was also the female male thing. About 15 years in or 20 years in, I moved to a different center, much larger, and I saw even changes in communication and changes in expectations there as well. So I've kind of morphed as I've gone through the time because I had the opportunity to start small, go medium, and then now I'm in a state position that we have 106 positions, and you meet and talk to people of every background. So one of the project managers that I worked with taught me in a leadership class that I took within the last 5 years taught me is, and it's using the language that as Sarah said earlier, know your audience. So we can talk about this a little bit further, but it was just like eye-opening to me because a lot of the times we're still considered clerical if we're female. And I know this is not about male versus female right now, it's knowing your audience. But he said to me, before you go to every meeting, know who you're meeting with. Know a little bit about who you're meeting with, maybe what they drink, what their likes are, but also know what the topic is. And that has stuck here in my mind. And I don't always do it, but I do know when I'm going, kind of what is expected. Like I went to an event last Thursday and I said, hey, what's the dress? Business casual, so to me, those are things that we learn as we go through how to communicate, kind of know your audience and maybe do just a tiny bit of research. But yep, 33 years and still open to new ideas and still learning every single day.
Thank you, Michelle. Thanks for being here. Yasmen.
Well, I'm Yasmen Barnett. I'm currently a communications supervisor in Central Florida. These are actually my last 2 weeks on the job until I go part-time, because then I'm switching over to a private company. So I started in this career when I was 19. It's only been 8 years, but it's been such a long journey in those 8 years. So I moved through the ranks really quickly and really young. And it was definitely interesting because I'm a millennial, borderline Gen Z. So everybody was kind of expecting me to be more Gen Z than millennial. And I cannot relate to a Gen Z person at all. It's very hard when I hear slang in the comm center because I don't understand it at all. And everybody has to explain it to me. And my assistant squad leader, he's only 2 years younger than me. And sometimes I don't understand what he's saying. It's just hard. But that shows just those 2 years how much there is such a difference in it. But I started when I was 19, had just finished my bachelor's and was doing my master's in the center. I did the same thing, went to college, took the opportunity that my center offered and got that scholarship, did it all the way through. And my original goal was to be a deputy. I wasn't even planning on staying into 911. And then about 3 years in, I had the opportunity to be an assistant squad leader. And that's where I kind of decided that, I'm going to let this deputy thing go, leave it to my husband at the time, and just move up. And from there on, it just kind of propelled. And I told myself I was going to be a supervisor by the time I was 25, and which was ambitious because I'm still the youngest supervisor. And I was the youngest supervisor at the time. And then 3 months after being 25, I made supervisor, which was completely different. And then COVID hit. So it was like, hey, let's take this extremely hard job and let's make it harder. So it was definitely, it's been a ride for the last 2 years. But among that time, I think being so young and being in a position that's so high, it's so different because everybody expects you to act one way. And when I actually speak my thoughts and opinions, it's completely different. Everybody doesn't expect what's coming out of my mouth. So, it's definitely interesting for it's my managers, my captains and all the chain kind of see us as the younger crowd. And then they kind of, they don't really give too much to it, but those are the people who are giving you a lot of your upcoming projects, and they're the future part of 912. So in building and backing those people up, you start to build your next, your next managerial group, your next group that's moving up the ranks. Because once they leave, I would hope that they would want to ensure that they're going to have good people taking over their positions. So in not doing that, they don't really support that, but also who are you leaving your centers to, But as we get further, we'll talk on it. So
thank you, Yasmen. Yes. This is, I love hearing all the different perspectives, and it doesn't matter where you are in your career. We're all experiencing things differently. We're all in different work environments, in different centers, in different situations. But there are things that you can do, again, to set yourself up for success. So I want to lay out up front what we mean when we're talking about professionalism and knowing your audience. And then I'm going to throw some questions out to our panel. And again, if you have anything to add or any questions, please throw them out in the comments. So through my experience, professionalism has come kind of in spurts. And I will tell you, in every situation that I've been in, there's been at least one person who I've noticed being, oh, wow, they speak really well. They're presenting themselves really well. They look confident. How can I be more like that? So I just want to throw out there before we begin, looking around you in your surroundings, say you're at a conference or in a meeting, and noticing these things is going to help you. So professionalism, how you speak and what you say. So we've all heard it's not what you say, it's how you say it. That's very, very important, but it is kind of what you say as well. So being able, as Yasmen said, to communicate your ideas in a certain way. And I have a friend who has a regional accent, and I can tell when he's on the phone with professionals or if he's just talking to someone, his voice changes completely, because it's how he wants to present himself. So that's important. How you dress, we'll dive into this a little bit more too, specifically how you yourself feel depending on what you're wearing. Is how you're dressing making you feel confident? I remember as a young woman sitting in a meeting, all men, and just feeling so self-conscious about everything, about being a woman, about what I'm wearing. It got to a point where I couldn't even speak because I just felt so less than in a room full of men in suits. And, I was probably wearing like a polo shirt and khakis. So just knowing knowing your audience, knowing what situation you're in, asking about the dress, all those things matter. Showing respect, giving a good first impression. All of these things are what we're talking about when we're talking about being professional. So my first question to the panel is, what are you seeing now that you think in 911 we could step up a little bit by just kind of understanding professionalism a little bit more and taking into account what we can do to step that up? So, Michelle, I'll throw it to you first.
Well, first of all, I want to start with saying that one of the most things I'm excited about right now is it doesn't matter where we are in our career, is this empowerment movement that's going on right now has given us such a voice. And we are multi-generational, intergenerational. And I took a course probably within the last 2 years that one of the 911 directors took in Kansas, and he talked about intergenerational communications. And what you hear and how you say it is different based on the age group that you're in. And I never really gave that any thought until then, because in my mind, the message was the message. But you indicated it at the very beginning of your opening was like, we all come from a different background and now we're adding eras to that. And what our background is makes us communicate differently. And another add-on that I'd say is that being virtual for a couple years, we have it's different. We're not in that one-on-one. You can, I'm in my living room right now, but when you get into a business meeting, it puts a whole different demeanor on it. And I think some of us, including myself, are struggling because the last couple of years we've been very free, and it's been these little cameras and you can mute when you want to and whatever. But in a meeting, you really have to watch the cues and, use the right proper English or not English, but, words, because what we say matters, and what we're trying to accomplish something at that meeting. And most of the time it's not for them to hear me joke or to hear, I can talk about my son all day long, but nobody really cares. And the thing is that we have a core mission and why we're there, but we don't have to lose our individuality, so I think we all struggle because there are so many factors going on right now. You talked about, how you were dressed and how that was one whole thing. How we use our words is another. And there's been times where I've had to message somebody and go, I have no idea what they just said, because they're using, and I don't want to say it's slang, but it's just very well a popular language that's being used right now. And I don't know either what the acronym is or what, what they're saying. And so I think, I've kind of rambled so much, I can't even remember really what your question is, but you're asking me what I found most recently. But I mean, there's so many pain points in that I struggle at in my age group, and I can't imagine somebody just starting the career, how they're feeling walking in the room. So I think, Leah, you in the middle probably has the easiest job right now. You're on the cusp of both, honestly.
I found so with just recently, I guess in the past 5 or 6 years, being a part of Leah's new office, right, and seeing that evolve. So Leah went from having a staff of 2 to now you have a staff of
7.
So part of Leah's job is not only to go out to 911 centers and talk, but also Leah has to lead the board meetings, which is a very, very formal thing. So I have watched Leah and her staff kind of morph into being very, very professional, like board meeting days. Everyone's dressed their best. Everyone's calm demeanor on the way you speak to each other, because you're being watched by all of these people. And Leah has kind of led by example by herself, you know, the way that you speak and the way that you dress, and them seeing what kind of a difference that makes in the way that people look at you and respect you and listen to what you're saying. It's been a cool kind of evolution, and kind of shows what you can do just by paying attention to those little things.
This is where it's very important to know your audience, and exactly, Michelle touched on this earlier, but what are you trying to accomplish? Like, know the setting, know what you're trying to achieve, and then approach it accordingly, whether that's your dress, whether that's your however you're speaking, your preparation for the event, whether it's a PSAP visit or not. I mean, it's just one of those things where you really need to take the time and be like, do they know, the audience, that I'm invested in why I'm here? Do they understand that this is just as important to me? This PSAP visit is just as important to me as this board meeting is. You know, those sorts of things. It's making certain that your audience knows that you're invested in why you're there too. I mean, how many of us have sat in a presentation before and had no idea what the presenter was talking about, and kind of felt like the presenter got lost because they might not have known what they were talking about either, or they didn't know their audience? Don't be that person. Don't lose your audience in the first 5 minutes. You know, make certain that you know why you're there. I mean, Michelle said she went to an event a couple of weeks ago and she asked a couple of questions. You know, just make sure you know the intended purpose of this. And this is something that Michelle's also already touched on, but do your research. So, former dispatcher here, I know we're nosy people. I don't think that purges out of you. You can Facebook stalk and LinkedIn stalk and all types of things because you've done it for detectives and police officers and firefighters and other first responders that are out in the field. You've done it. You're magnificent at it. So take the time to have that conversation or do that research, and then arrive 5 minutes early and say something to the target audience where they know you have some commonality or you've noticed something about them. That's always a trick that I sort of, that's not a trick. I mean, I just said it to the world, but that's what I tell people. Just make sure you have an idea or an awareness, and make that impression on them so that they know, again, you feel that it's as important to you as it is to them.
You know, it's funny.
So, Yasmen, you're in the center. Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead. I was going to throw it to you. Go.
No, you're fine. I was just going to say, based off that research, it's funny because that can even go down to the part of dressing the part. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you that I've dressed, professionally most of my life. I've tried to the best of my abilities, but sometimes when I just have a little bit of doubt, I will go onto Google and check what the new trends are, because you'd be surprised how every year everything changes. So I go on, I make sure that my closet matches what is this year's in. I don't really pay attention to that, but I try, because when you start to look a little outdated, you start to lose that attention too.
It's a good point. That is such a good point. It requires effort. And then do you see, no, Yasmin, do they wear uniforms in your center? Do you wear uniforms?
So we've evolved from wearing full uniforms to now wearing a polo shirt and jeans. So I started when we were wearing full uniforms. So we were wearing our polos and we were wearing either khakis or black BDUs. And honestly, I loved that period of time, because it wasn't that you had to worry about what kind of jeans you were wearing, what shoes matched these jeans, or anything like that. I like uniformity. That's just me. But when it changed, where we were able to wear jeans, now you kind of had to watch everyone, because from a supervisor's perspective, now you needed to make sure that everybody's jeans were appropriate to the position, that they weren't wearing jeans that were ripped or wearing jeans that, were stone washed, that they were wearing their polos. And, if it's tucked into your pants, you've got to wear a belt. If it's not, you don't. So it's like all those little things that have just changed over the years.
Sarah, I can take that and make it uncomfortable, though. I did 30 years I started with uniforms, and then we went more casual, polo and whatever. And then more recently, I worked under a brand new police chief, and he wanted everyone in uniforms. And I thought that was fabulous. It was easy. You didn't have to figure out what you were going to wear every day. And, it's kind of like, boom, it's right there. But he also included that if you travel anywhere, you wear your uniforms, full uniform, because you're representing, right? So I go to an APCO International conference, and I was the only woman walking around in a full uniform. So, I feel like there's a room for some adjustment based on your situation. Now, I don't think early in his career he would have changed that, but I think it's become a little bit more lax, if you would, because that's really not today anymore. And when I went, I literally was like, I was proud that I was representing, but a little bit like walking with my head down the because I'm like, yep, that's me, so it works both ways. So
yeah.
Michelle, you've already mentioned this, but I think that's one thing that kind of a global pandemic and a virtual world has changed, is we're back to maybe a little bit of a less formal representation. Still professional, but a little less formal in certain settings. And I know that when I began to have meetings with people, everybody there was in uniform. I was never in a center that had a uniform. So when I knew that they were going to be in their class A's or their, whatever their top level uniform was, I wore a black suit, because I wanted to at least represent in a way that was acceptable in the audience's mind. And if I wanted a little flair, maybe I wore a belt or some shoes that were red or something. But something like that is even if you don't have a uniform, you still can be completely accepted by the audience and still have some portion of on one of these planning sessions we talked about, like painting your fingernails. There's a little bit of flair there. There's a pin or something that you want to wear that expresses who you are. And you can never kind of underestimate, as you become part of that group and accepted in a group, especially if it's one of those where, you're trying to be heard and make your case and grow your clout or stature within that group, is over time, you get to be more and more of yourself and represent more or present more and more of your good ideas and all of that. It's not solely you. It's a little bit about the audience accepting what they're hearing, and you want them to be open to what you have to say, rather than standoffish because they don't know what to do with blue hair. And I love to see people's individuality, but I also know I live in the South, the deep South. And I also know that there are occasions where it would not benefit me to represent in certain ways. And because I want them to hear me, and I may have 5 minutes. I may have 5 minutes of their time, particularly a legislator, and it might be on an elevator ride. So that kind of leads to another thing. Have your elevator speech ready. Always have your elevator speech ready. We had a representative from the governor's office in our office recently to visit, and it's the governor's policy director. So we had a specific meeting and about a specific topic that I over prepared for, and then I walked him up the hall and introduced him to every one of my employees, and I said what they did, like, she's our so and so, she does this for us. And he asked, what do you do here at the board? He asked every one of them. It didn't matter what I said. And I had warned them to have their elevator speech ready, because I don't think I'd ever told my staff to do that before. Mm-hmm. And every one of them had it ready, and every one of them knocked it out of the park, and they gave their spin on what they did. And I was so proud in that moment that they were ready, they were prepared. You know better than anybody what you do and what you bring to the table. Make certain you have that speech ready to give it whenever it's the opportunity's there.
Yes, because then what kind of impression did he leave your office with? The Alabama State office has their stuff together and they're going places, and I need to come back and consult with them and take into consideration what they're asking. That's why this is all important, especially right now when we're trying to get reclassified. So I know Kansas and Alabama both have reached reclassification. Yasmen and I are in Florida and fighting that battle. So people are being advised all over the country to invite legislatures into your 911 center. Mm-hmm. When they come in, just assume you have to be ready for that, and assume you want to make a good impression. Have your elevator speech ready. And I know, Erica, you noticed that policies with tattoos and piercings and hair color are coming about. And I know it's not the same as it was 50 years ago, right? Almost everyone I know has a tattoo somewhere. But working within that frame of mind, if, say, a legislator comes into your PSAP, they pick yours, and you have one chance, they're coming into one. You have one chance to make that impression, and what effect that's going to have on reclassification for your state. I think that's the best example I can give. You know, I think a lot of people know if you leave the 911 center and you're going to, say, the state capitol to meet with a legislature, that's different. That's, you need to really pay attention to what you're wearing, because they're not going to listen to what's coming out of your mouth if they're distracted by other things, if you know what I mean. So I say all that to say that this is not an attack on people who want to show their individuality. You know, I do. Like, I love fashion. Like, I'm always looking for a way to be professional, but maybe not always formal. I like that distinction. Like, I don't always have to be wearing a suit to look professional. And, each one of us is responsible for taking that on themselves and how we're going to speak and how we're going to address people. I love that example. So Yasmen, have you noticed, so you're about to transition from the center into the private side. Have you been thinking about that in terms of how you dress, how you speak, any of that? Is there training being offered? I'm curious.
Yeah, so it's definitely a nerve-wracking thing because it's completely different. It's nothing that I know. So this is supposed to be a remote position. So it's going to be a little easier in that sense because I don't have to go into an office. It's going to be a lot easier to dress from the top up. But yeah, no, there is definitely a big thing between it, because I think in the private sector, or at least from what I'm understanding of it, in the private sector, there is a different way to speak, a different way to dress, a different way to present yourself, because now it's not so much that you're speaking to the public, but you're speaking to other 911 professionals that are in the background, in the foreground, they're behind the scenes, and you've got to make that impression on them, which is completely different. I've always been used to impressing the public and the callers that I speak with and maybe my management, but never having to impress my peers now, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a really big distinction. And so with the company that I'm going with, one of the biggest things that I asked for was to stay part-time. I actually asked to stay part-time because I wanted to stay relevant to the position, and I wanted to stay relevant with other people. I think within law enforcement, there is a law enforcement, FD, just first responder in general, there's sometimes a mistrust when you get someone who has not been in the field or doesn't know the field and comes from somewhere outside of it completely, that they don't take your word as valuable as someone who knows what they do, has done the job before, or, you know, has just been in the center alone, because there's some people who've never been in a center at all. So in that sense, you know, I wanted to stay that part so that I could still say, you know, I still dispatch on the side, I still do this, and present myself that way, and still keep up with everything, still be able to know what's new this month or this coming year in order to have something in common with that person to speak with. Again, going back to doing your research. So the training, from what I understand, there is training available. It's supposed to be an extensive onboarding process for the position. So hopefully that'll help in helping that. But I think there is still a lot that you have to put into it also to prepare yourself as well.
Does anybody in the audience, is there any kind of training provided at your center about this kind of thing? I know there's policies, there's dress policies. I'm wondering if there's like any sort of professional training that happens in 911 centers, because you are a professional. I don't know of any. Michelle, have you seen anything like that?
I've seen a couple agencies as I travel through have a transitioning from peer to supervisor or up, but it doesn't really talk about, you know, how you dress, how you act, how you, you know, I worked for a very formal police department that had those lined out of what you did when you were in the public versus what you did, and you know, but it didn't filter down into dispatch or the 911 center. So yeah. And I kind of want to circle back real quick, Yasmen. I'm so impressed that you check your wardrobe every year, because I'm pretty sure that I have clothes back from when I was in college. I didn't want to go past that, because that, you know, that's kind of you too. It's important, you know. Sarah
Listen,
and I were talking.
I will say that there's stuff in my closet. Yeah, there's stuff in my closet that actually belonged to my mom that I would try and like shift with the current trends, because sometimes it is that little pop of something that just, it catches somebody's attention.
Yes.
Hey, Sarah, I'd be interested, based on the comment about the outdated policies on tattoos, piercings, hair color, and whatever else those outdated policies are, because I know when I was in the PSAP, our policies were outdated. I mean, they were even on paper that I was pretty sure came out on one of those copiers that you had to roll, you know, like when I was in elementary.
When you pulled the sides off?
Yeah. So anyway, this is what I would probably challenge people to do. When you see that outdated policy, edit it, amend it. Submit it as a proposal of updating this policy. That's one thing, and it happens to be Friday, so we're a little bit more casual here, excuse me, in our office on Fridays. But like you see, I have a logoed shirt for the board, but it's very comfortable, you know, it's untucked, you know, those sorts of things with gray pants. And so that's my Friday casual with, you know, white sandals, open-toed sandals, you know, open-toed. So anyway, that's I've even seen that in policy still about closed-toed shoes, but my point is, like, within our office, I gave everybody a catalog and just said, hey, pick out some things that you think would flatter your figure or your physique, or things that you would be comfortable in, even if you have a particular brand shirt that you want to bring in and have embroidered, those sorts of things. And I think I realize that I'm the director here and we had that leeway and latitude. But if you are able to then promote an updated policy and then show a sketch or a mock-up done by a logo company of what that would look like, I tend to think, at least 50% of the time, you probably get a yes as far as getting outside the norm of the uniform or the formality of it, and then maybe on certain days or shifts you could shift that. But and that extends beyond just clothing. But if you would, put a person in there that has tattoos on it and just see what they say, kind of thing. But show them what that would look like, and that it wouldn't, because a lot of times, I know a lot of times when I brought things to the table first, it was a hard no, and so you just have to have endurance and long suffering sometimes and bring it back. So that's what I would suggest for those outdated policies, because they're not rewriting themselves.
Well, it kind of segues right back into what we're trying to do, though, reclassification. What did we hear the National 911 Office says is that they're not going to reclassify because our job descriptions are so outdated that it's so clerical, right? So It's not just, it's at every level that we have to change or grow. I think grow is the better word, not change. Grow with what is going on in the industry. Sorry, I interrupted you, Sarah.
No, I was going to say the same exact thing. It's so funny. I was going to say, how many policies in your center are not updated? It's part. That's one part of it. And going back to knowing your audience, say that's something you want to change or update, any kind of policy. How are you going to go about that? How are you going to speak to the person that you are presenting this idea to? How are you going to look that day? How are you going to carry yourself? What language are you going to use? And we talked about this, Leah, like being down south, it is a lot more formal how people address each other. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. It's a kind of a regional norm. If you go out of your way, you have an idea, you want to update a policy, put your best foot forward. Don't go and say, this is stupid, we need to change it, even though you might feel that way. We've all felt that way, right? So even taking an opportunity like that to, that day, make sure you're feeling good, make sure you're wearing the clothes that make you feel confident and professional to present ideas, because again, it's not always what you say, but how you say it. Words matter, tone matters, your preparation matters. I want to go into the comments just a little bit. So Gary had said that you actually show pictures of what your expectations are in terms of dress, so that no one kind of feels ganged up on. I think a lot of us feel that way if somebody says like, oh, we need to dress better. We all think, oh, that's because of me. So no, that's good. That's good. So you're actually showing, pictures of what you expect, which is good. Erica, I always let new people know our dress code prior to the first day. Also give them information on people we typically wear when they go to conferences and trainings. Yes. Unless you're expected to wear a uniform or a polo or something like that, you are representing your agency everywhere you go, whether it be during the day or at dinner in the evening. How you dress, what you look like, what you say, how you say it, just something to keep in mind always. If you're representing your agency well, they're going to send you to more things. So back to you. I wanted to ask some more questions before we go. I'm trying to find Oh, so in your opinion, as what we were talking about, and how does the impression you make on someone help influence your desired outcome, depending on a situation? So, Michelle, I'm going to throw it to you first. Have you seen in Kansas's journey to reclassification, or anything you want to address? Have you experienced how we make an impression influencing someone's decision in the way that we want it to go?
Throw that to someone else if you would. I'd kind of like a different opinion than mine first, if you don't mind.
I'm going to throw it to Yasmen.
Let's see.
And you can talk about yourself. I know you've shared
that question for me one more time.
What? Sorry, I talked over you.
Repeat that for me one more time.
Okay, I'm going to make it personal to you. How have you noticed in the way you present yourself, and the way that you dress, and the way that you speak? Have you noticed a difference in how you're able to influence people and get your desired outcome?
Absolutely. I mean, that is a big thing. Probably within the last year, we started doing this whole big conference circuit. One of my coworkers and I, Erica Lakey, we basically put it amongst ourselves where we were going to just kind of put ourselves out there and see what we could do for ourselves and see how it could influence others. So the biggest thing was conferences. We put in for a bunch of conferences, started trying to present, ended up presenting quite a bit. And then surprisingly, when I got back to my center, my assistant squad leader at the time, she was like, I think I'm going to put in for a conference the following year. And I was like, what? So it was completely different because that was an outcome that I wasn't actually expecting. It was not one from her in particular, because she was one that was kind of reserved. She had a hard time presenting or even speaking during our new hire academy. So the fact that she came up to me, it wasn't even a conversation that we were having. And I just come back from doing all these different conferences. And that was what she saw of me. That's what she had been seeing that I'd been doing for all these coming weeks. And so she said, I think I'm going to put in for one the following year. I was like, okay, maybe I'm really being watched upon. That's when it kind of really hit that what I was doing and how I was presenting myself was really being noticed by my employees in the comm center, and how they were, witnessing everything. Because I hate to say that you shouldn't think of how you see yourself, but at the same time, you should be paying attention to how you're presenting yourself to others. And as a supervisor in particular, it was very hard for me to leave sometimes, because I never wanted my employees to think that, oh, she's never in the office because she's doing all these other things. When in reality, one of my goals was to do the conference scenes so that I could get a reaction like from what my assistant squad leader said, in being able to empower others to try and do either the same thing or go outside their comfort lines, do more for themselves.
That's awesome.
To tag into what Yasmen said, you never know who's watching, because you're just not, you have an intended or targeted audience, and we're here to talk about knowing your audience, but you also never know what the cascading effect of who else is watching you do that. I will freely and fully admit to you, I was a terrible, terrible, terrible public speaker when I became the director here. Like, I hated it. I mean, it was to the point of I would become nauseated and sick. Like, I was just like, I don't enjoy that. I don't want to do that. I realize it is part of my job. And I remember standing, looking in the mirror in my bathroom one day saying, you have to, it's your job. You have to. But I also have been, it's been recognized, the improvement that I've made in that over time is like, you have to get over yourself. And these are things that you accepted this opportunity, somebody had faith and confidence enough in you to lead an organization. So get up there and lead. And those are the things that I had to practice. And you just become better. You just become better at it. I really appreciate Gary's comment about the chair height and him being shorter than the person that he was talking to. So I am an above average height female according to charts or whatever. But that is one thing. I gave a presentation years ago. Sarah, you were there, and it was my board chair who happened to be a female at the time. Um, and one of the questions posed was like, how do you bolster your own confidence? You know, it was all the prepare, know your audience, that type of thing. And I said, well, sometimes I just wear high heels because it makes me feel more confident. At least it makes me feel as tall as everybody else that I may be speaking to, because typically at certain tables, it was a group of men. And on average, they're taller than women. So that was sort of just one of the little things. And then, okay, so I like to wear animal print high heel shoes, you know, those sorts of things. But yeah, absolutely, it's small things like that where you just contribute to your own confidence so that your audience hears what you're saying. And because the way you say it, I mean, if you're prepared and you're saying all the right things, but then you're confident while you're saying it, it's a much better message received. It has been my experience.
Sarah, I think the reason I didn't want to go first is because it's something I'm struggling with right now. I mean, it's something I am very observant of right now, because there's such a group of empowered, just energy-filled 911 professional women right now. And I know that I'm, towards the end of my career, and I don't want to. So I found myself not saying a lot in meetings that I used to be more vocal about, because I didn't want to squash what they were trying to accomplish. And then finding a happy medium of where my historic knowledge would bring value to it. So that's kind of why I paused, is because I was like, I'm in a point of it's not a struggle as much as I'm very observant that there are many people in the room that have this energy right now that could take them in a different direction, that just because I haven't been there or I didn't experience, or I guess what was eye-opening to me is being on a board where there's all this energy and they want to try something. And I'm like, yeah, I'm thinking in the back of my mind, been there, done that, that didn't work. And then I thought, no, what if you have a tweaked little different approach than we took years ago, and you just can't keep. So I think that's why I struggled with it a little bit, is just that I was trying to bring all of those things to the table without squashing anything or pushing anything down that was trying to be accomplished. And it is not always an easy position to be in.
That is such an amazing point. And I'm all about empowerment, especially bringing new ideas. That's huge. However, I spent so much of my career among professionals who were 20, 30 years my senior and had seen a lot of things. Like you said, like I have an idea, and while you're not squashing it, I have so much to learn from why it didn't work for you, right? I have so much to learn from the people that came before me and said, we went this route. These are the barriers we hit. So if this is the direction you want to go, watch out for this. And I think that we need to keep that in mind, all of us. If people have come before us and walked that trail, whatever kind of success they've had, there's so much knowledge. There's so much knowledge from folks who have been in 911 for 30 years that is applicable and that can help us and that we have to learn from. So, I try to keep that in mind. Listening and asking is a huge, huge part of growing and presenting ideas. And don't forget that even though we're trying to change things, that doesn't mean others haven't tried and we can learn from them. That's huge. And, people come and when you come to a meeting, you're feeling empowered and you're feeling like you're going to say what you want to say, just keep in mind, again, it's not always how you say it, what you say, it's how you say it. Being your true self, being your real self, there's a way to do that professionally without being rude too. So these are all things to keep in mind. And Michelle, like I know, even looking in the 911 Wonder Woman Facebook group, the experiences of people who have walked the walk has been so revolutionary, because people have access to it now. Like Michelle, like you and I may not have ever met if it weren't for, online and social media. So now I have access to you. That's the whole reason I started this. This is the whole reason I started this, is because I wanted to bridge that gap. And, we need to keep that in mind on both sides. So for you, you said you tend to keep your mouth shut. Well, you don't need to do that. Even there's a difference between shutting down the idea, which I've had done many times. I think all of us have, like, no, that's not going to work. And saying, here's my experience with that, take what you will. And, that's important too.
No, it did take me a while to figure out that I have that value. But let the story go work its way. Right. So yeah, no, I'm exactly with you. You don't have to be silent. You just have to find that easy way to transition that information. So yeah.
Yeah, and I'm just at that point. So I'm 39. I've been doing this for 17 years, and I'm at a point now where I feel like I can finally be like, oh, I've done that, and it's so hard not to want to help. Like you're trying to be helpful, and you come off as like shutting. So it's a fine line. It really is.
It's surprising, but I think in my case, I've always been scared of everything like that. But over the years, I kind of looked forward to the people who had already done it and it didn't have success with it to say that. I wanted to know what their experience was with what they had already gone through, and work with them in particular to then try and achieve that same goal. Because you're right, it may have just been that one time that there's just something there, but this next time, now maybe if you've got another brain on it or more people on it, there's now something that you can change, that now it does become successful. And that same person who worked on it, they still feel successful as well, because now they still achieved what they wanted to do also. So I honestly, I look forward to that when it comes to meetings.
It's a very good point. Thank you for couching it like that, because you can both be successful together, walking that path.
So good. Okay. I'm going to go. I know we're at an hour, so we'll wrap up here in a second. I want to point out what Chrissy said. She said that she wears taller shoes, bigger hair, and more eyeliner. And like, that makes her feel like, I got this. And I totally relate to that, like those exact things, except maybe the hair, because nothing's really going on here. But but yeah, it's, when like, try something new, like add a little, like I always said, I worked in a very professional office and I painted my nails blue, and like that was my individuality coming out. I'm reading your comment, Gary. My director asked why interviewee has a different chair. Oh, most of the panel are men, the candidates are women. I want them to be able to talk at eye level. I hate looking down at candidates. I learned this from a line a candidate used. She was very short and poked fun at herself about it. She was amazing, but then she said, you may be looking down on me, but if you hire me, you'll be looking up to me. Oh, that's so good. That's so good. It's the little things.
Sarah, early on, somebody commented about what new hires wore on the first day.
Oh, yeah.
The feedback from our group, we kind of paneled it internally, was that they wanted them to have the same shirts that everybody else was wearing day one, because it made them inclusively feel like the team. I'd be interested what you guys think about that. I know we're short on time, but I thought that was brilliant. give them business cards, give them whatever makes them feel like part of the team day one. That's a very little cost to the benefit.
I think that was one of the questions posed maybe on the Facebook page about what do you do to help your trainees feel included day one. This is a common thing given in a lot of presentations, particularly with the women in this group that give these presentations, is to include the person that's sitting by themselves or include the person that, that doesn't say much, or maybe ask them or prep them with a question ahead of time for that they're prepared for. I mean, don't put them on the spot if you know it's going to make them have an anxiety attack. But, those are those types of things where you can be inclusive and promotional, not just of yourself, but of your peer, and get them started on the right foot too, because ultimately that's what we are trying to do. This is promote this as a profession, as a lifelong profession. I got into it when I had zero anticipation of staying in it, but I was a hungry college kid working retail and I needed tuition paid for. But it's one of those things I strive, particularly in this seat today, of wanting to recruit the people that are going to be really good at this job, tapping into every talent that they have, and then keeping them for absolutely as long as we can. And that starts on day one. That starts in the interview, actually. Starts before day one.
Tools for success.
The organization makes on the interviewee. So. Mm-hmm.
Oh, Erica, I wish money wasn't always the reason for saying no. I think it shows we welcome you aboard. Instead, it's let's wait to see if they make it before we pay for shirts. Yeah, that's not comfortable.
So Erica's my coworker, and so I know exactly what she's talking about. Over the years, things transitioned where we were having such a high turnover rate, where they were dressing professionally during our academy. And our academy was, I think at the time, 8 weeks. So for 8 weeks, they dressed professionally. They didn't wear jeans. If it was dress down, they participated in that. But as soon as they got out of the academy, we ordered their shirts. So probably about halfway through training, they got their shirts. And so they felt included. Now we don't order their shirts until after they are signed off in their first phase. So it was that to kind of basically save. But by now allowing them to wear those jeans, by now allowing them to wear their jeans in the academy, they are now seeing that they're not super dressed differently from everybody else that's on the floor. And then at about our second weekend, they actually do a 2-week observation where they're on the floor. So they do get embraced a lot more than they did previously when they didn't have that 2-week observation with every squad.
That's awesome. And that's such a great point of how you're dressed and how you're being presented makes you feel a certain way, included or not included.
I'm sorry. I was going to say, lastly, we've seen such turnover. You mentioned that, Yasmen, that it's at every level. And we have so many new directors right now that are just paddling. They're like, oh my gosh, this is so much. So one of the things that we worked on is creating a new director's handbook. This is the Bible I needed to pull off the shelf if I had a quick answer I needed. But we've also, because we don't think about that, where we think a lot about that front line and how we grow them from that. But there's some, and especially these small centers right now that are going, 18 months and they're the director. And we're like, what? Can you imagine? Sarah, your eyes say it all. And that's exactly what's happening. And it's happening nationwide because of so much turnover and stress and whatever. And so, that's another whole topic we could talk another hour about. But we found this book has been helpful just to say, these are some of the things we wish somebody had told us, through the years.
That's a great idea. That's a great idea. Okay.
We did that for our supervisors.
Yeah.
It's great.
It helps. Well, yes, we could definitely go on, but Thank you for everybody who joined. I know there's going to be more people who are watching not live. So if you're one of those, please feel free to reach out to one of us or in the Facebook group, make a comment, and we can continue this conversation. I think it was awesome. I want to thank you all for helping me out and being a part of the panel. And again, we're going to be doing this monthly on different topics. So if you have ideas, please submit them. One more thank you to Datamark for being our partner in these Empower panels. And a shout out to Sandy, who couldn't make it. And we're hoping you feel better. And thanks for helping us prepare. So thank you all. Have a wonderful weekend. And we will see you soon. Now I have to end it. Okay, now.